Todd Swanstrom is with the University of Missouri St. Louis, professor of community collaboration and public policy. So this is a guy who spends a lot of time studying exactly how cities work, or maybe they don't work from time to time, or maybe more often than we'd like to admit. So let's dive right in with a topic that we can't maybe talk about the state of STL without talking about crime. It's something we often try to fight back against. I feel like every citizen knows the Chamber of Commerce refrain on how our stats are calculated, and if they were done with the county, we wouldn't be the most dangerous city. But at the same time, my gosh, just today we're hearing about a 60% year-to-year increase in homicides. Is crime holding us back?
Crime is definitely an issue, but it's mostly an issue in the poorest neighborhoods. So if you looked at the region as a whole, most people live in pretty safe communities, and it turns out that if you're not hanging out with drug dealers and you're not hanging out with people who have a criminal background, chances are you're in a pretty safe place. But that doesn't mean it's not a serious issue. And also, I think it affects the image. If people get their news from television, I hate to say this, Casey, but they tend to view crime as a serious problem. If they read the newspapers, it's not as serious because they have more of a perspective on it. So it creates an image problem for the city. So I don't want to say it's not serious for the people who live in neighborhoods with high crime, and it is serious, and we need to do more about it. But one final point is this idea of the Ferguson effect, that somehow the police are soft now, and now the criminals are getting out.
Criminals are emboldened.
Yeah, well, from what I read, there is no Ferguson effect. That's not what's going on. These are deep-seated issues.
Well, sticking with the TV news analogy for 1 second, we hear from a lot of people that we don't spend enough time, like you said, on the crime in neighborhoods that maybe aren't well-to-do. Is crime an issue that is keeping a particular part of our population from moving ahead?
Oh, definitely. I think, for example, research will show that if a child grows up within something like 500 yards of a violent crime, even if that child has not witnessed that crime, it actually has a statistically significant impact on their performance in school. So that crime is impacting in generating the kind of stress level, the kind of insecurity, its randomness that makes it so disturbing and so difficult for people to cope with.
Okay, speaking of school, it's well documented some troubles we have with education, unaccredited schools. It's maybe easy to forget we have some really good schools, but not everyone is going to ever not everyone has access to some really good public schools. Is our education holding us? What's the state of STL?
Well, we're one of the most fragmented. It's always the case, and in the case of schools, it's also true. One of the most fragmented in the nation. We have more school districts per 10,000 population than just about any other metropolitan area in the country. So as a result, we have great disparities across school districts, and there's no doubt that we have unaccredited school districts, and frankly, they have been treated very poorly by the legislature. I think this whole transfer program where some districts were receiving $20,000 for every kid from Normandy that transferred into that district was outrageous. And you notice recently there was apparently a kind of agreement struck where most of the districts are going to limit what they will require to be paid for these transferring students from the unaccredited districts to a reasonable amount, more like $5,000 or $6,000.
This is something that was
that's
draining
progress.
the
That's
schools.
progress. Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned fragmentation. What do you make of that? Is it really worse than anywhere else in the country when it comes to our own little kingdoms that we have spread out throughout the region?
Well, I think it is a problem, especially in North St. Louis County, where you have such small municipalities that they frankly don't have the ability to have the level of professionalism and expertise and scale economies, right, which will enable them to be efficient. Now, the theory would be that they could contract out for services and therefore get highly professional services, but then they lose some control. There's a lot of politics going on there. Some of them do contract for police services, and I think that's an improvement. So,
is the mentality of this fragment that it's almost accepted or expected that everyone fights for their little piece? Is that holding us back?
I think it is, but we should note right away that every weakness is a strength. It's a great strength that we have these small communities that are tight. We have lots of elected officials. People are close to their government. They feel comfortable with their government. As Terry Jones said at one point, it's like putting on an old sweater. We like our little communities, but so we have a small town mentality in a big metropolis. So in some ways, it's really nice because you have these, I think, tight parishes and municipalities and neighborhoods that are quite strong in St. Louis. On the other hand, the kind of bridging social capital across these communities is often not where it should be. So it'd be nice if we could have a little bit more cohesion and a little less fragmentation, but don't discount the advantages of having these little communities, these little, battalions that people can be comfortable in.
Speaking of services that they provide, municipal courts. Talk about Ferguson, the lessons that were, maybe we have yet to learn, but definitely the issues that were brought to light. Are we turning the corner? We're almost a year since the events of Ferguson, as we like to say.
That's right. Well, I think on policing, yes, the region has come to grips with that. I think everybody recognizes that there's an exploitative system there that is disrespecting, exploiting, and pumping money out of some of the most vulnerable members of our society in order to generate revenues for local governments, and we know that's wrong. And we're doing something about that, and I think that's going to change. I mean, I think this law about what percentage of revenues you can get is going to make a big difference. I think it's very difficult now for municipalities to engage in this game the way they did before. So I think it's been a big learning experience. However, I would call that the low-hanging fruit. I mean, that's sure, we're doing something about that, and we should. And that was, something that I, who study these things, didn't realize how exploitative and really, it was almost, like a debtor's prison. People getting stuck in a debtor's prison, wrapped up in this legal process. So we're addressing it. I think it's going to be a lot better. But underneath that lie these inequities and these, a lack of resources, concentrated poverty, lack of job opportunities that are underneath these police problems that we have to get at eventually.
Real quickly, because I have to toss to one other segment that we need to get to, but are we doing anything right that gives you a sense of optimism about the future of St. Louis?
Well, I do think there are examples that are coming out of the Ferguson Commission that are bringing people aware and making people aware of the need for action. What I'm disappointed with, frankly, is that the top corporate leadership and political leadership in the region hasn't really been willing to stick their neck out for certain solutions at this point, as I see it. There's a lot of activity going on, but there's kind of a missing ingredient there, which is top private sector and public sector leaders who are willing to champion initiatives to get things done in the wake of Ferguson.
Todd, we'll leave it there for now. We'll have you back at the end of the show. Thank you for your perspective. Todd Swanstrom, University of Missouri, St. Louis. We also had a conversation online earlier this week to hear what you have to say about the state of STL. Let's take a look.